Hello, everyone. I'm Tony.
And I'm Alex,
And we're Inside Information. Today, we'll be discussing Fight Club, made in 1999. Tell me about it, Alex.
So Fight Club was released on November 11th of 1999. It was directed by, I'm not 100% sure about this, David Fincher.
Yeah.
He's also the director of Zodiac, Gone Girl, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo,
Yeah.
The Social Network as well,
Oh, I know.
and Seven,
Oh, Seven. Yeah, that one's.
The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So
Oh,
he really
I've
likes
seen the
working
movie
with Brad Pitt. And
Yeah, Brad Pitt
that's
is in
it.
a few of his
He's
movies.
he's in a lot of them actually. I think he might be in. No, he's not in all of them. But anyways, this movie is actually based off of a novel that has two sequels.
Mm-hmm.
It was released in 1996. It's by Chuck, and forgive me, I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. Palahniuk, I think. I am not 100% sure. And the book was actually inspired by an actual fight that the author had.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said that he went to work and nobody said anything.
Yeah.
That they just thought of him as normal. So that sort of inspired him to write this novel, which
Ended up being the movie.
And it made the movie.
Yeah.
And so Fight Club had a budget of 61 million, if I remember correctly, and made roughly 101.2 million.
That's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but I mean, at first it wasn't a popular movie, and the studio actually prepared for big losses because they didn't like the film when it was released. But the home release really brought it back to life, and now it's regarded as a cult classic, I guess you can say.
Yes.
And I mean, a lot of people know it. It has stars such as Edward Norton, Jared Leto, Brad Pitt, obviously, and a rock star named Meatloaf. Also, Helena Bonham Carter.
Cool. Yeah, I like Edward Norton. He was the Hulk at one point. Though we don't talk about that.
Yeah, we're not going to mention that movie.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get right into the questions.
Yeah, what did you think of the beginning?
The beginning. It starts with him sort of explaining his life. I guess
The narrator?
The narrator, yeah. It starts with him explaining his life. He's called the narrator because his name is actually never mentioned in the film. So the only names that we know in there are really Marla, Tyler Durden, and a bunch of other characters there.
Yeah.
Which we'll get more into. And so I thought it was kind of, honestly, it was pretty obviously that he was depressed.
Yeah.
And he had no point in life, and I think he was kind of, just going through the motions rather than actually enjoying life, I guess you can say. And so, I mean, I guess it was kind of a point to make with the bleak beginning, sort of showing what he was like and why his mind was so twisted, I guess you can say, why he was at that point. So, yeah.
So then why would you think he was an insomniac?
I think probably the stress of his work. I mean, I don't know how insomnia works exactly, but I do know that it causes restless nights, and I mean, I have had some of those a lot of times, but it's still interesting to see, the character. Also, Edward Norton did a really good job in acting as that.
Yes.
He was a great actor in this role. I wouldn't say perfect, but I wouldn't expect him to be perfect, but he did a really good job, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you think of Marla?
So Marla comes in later in the film after we know that he goes to support groups of illnesses and things like that he doesn't really suffer from, just to feel loved or happiness or some type of thing like that. And so Marla there, I think, serves as a reminder of what he's lying about. Because, I mean, Marla doesn't have that either. Of course, we can see that by some of the support groups that she's going to, which are pretty much all of his.
Yeah.
And so we see that they have this little game and they make a deal at one point. And I kind of thought that Marlo was an interesting character because of that thing, sort of. And I mean, I guess it does make sense a little that he hates her so much because of him being reminded constantly about how much of a liar he is and how much of a fraud.
Yeah, that must suck, being constantly reminded of that. But that also leads me to ask you about Tyler Durden. Correct?
Yeah.
Durden.
So they meet on a plane ride. They meet on a plane ride, I guess you can say. Not really so much, but we'll get into that later. Tyler Durden is kind of an interesting character to add into there. So before he woke up to see Tyler, he was asleep and he was dreaming of the plane pretty much getting destroyed completely.
Yeah.
And so I think it was interesting for him to just wake up and all of a sudden Tyler's right next to him. And I mean, I thought it was an interesting career choice what he had because he makes and sells soap.
Soap. Oh yeah, that's right. You see it on the posters.
You see it on the posters and you see it on everything. His famous soap. So I thought it was interesting how they just added Tyler into there, and I thought it was an interesting career choice too. How they decided soap was the right choice, not anything else, just soap.
Yeah, I mean that's a unique choice.
That is a really unique choice.
Yeah, and like a little later on in the film, there is an explosion of the house of the narrator's house. What did you think of that?
Okay, so after the explosion, I wasn't really expecting it at all. But after the explosion, he thinks about calling Marla to ask if he could stay there, but he decides ultimately against it, and he goes and calls Tyler, and he stays at Tyler's house. But what I find interesting is that he'd go to such a new person. Like he literally met him on the plane ride the night of.
Yeah.
And so I'd say it's kind of interesting to just meet this guy who's really weird, honestly, because I mean we all knew from the plane, but he was kind of fun, I guess you could put it like that, and crazy and wild. But I mean the narrator never had in his life. I mean you can put it like that. And so I thought it was a bit interesting how he called him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I definitely wouldn't.
That's interesting reliability on Tyler's part and the narrator thinking as such. And also, they eventually go to the bar, the narrator and Tyler. What do you think about the fighting?
The fighting, I think it was unexpected.
Unexpected?
Like, I mean, for a movie named Fight Club, you'd expect a fight, I know, but I didn't expect it so suddenly without, like, any purpose. Because, I mean, before I watched the film, I thought Fight Club meant, like, a boxing type thingamajiggy or something like that. And so, obviously, it's way different. And, I mean, it's really sudden, but I think it's good for the director's part and how he added that just like that. And when in the movie Edward Norton punches Brad Pitt's ear during the fight,
like his ear lobe or like on the side of his
ear, his ear. And so that part actually wasn't scripted. So his reaction was genuine there, where he like he's kind of angry, I guess you can say, that he punched his ear. And then, of course, the fight takes place, and they both feel rejuvenated after it. So I guess it's kind of interesting to see how a fight would bring that sort of life into someone. And
like other people joined in as well.
Other people joined in later. Because they kept on, because then they went back the next day, and they fought again, and then they fought again, and then they fought again. So I thought it was kind of interesting how people just want to fight. Because I mean, also Brad Pitt's character Tyler Durden says that he hasn't been in a fight, and he wants for like a christening, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting how people want to be in a fight and don't seem to evade it in that film.
It's kind of ironic in a way. And also, a little later on than that, Marla gets an overdose, which was an interesting scene to me. Why'd you think that happened? And
Marla getting an overdose, I mean, I think it was kind of expected knowing Marla's character.
Yeah, sure, and her conditions
and I mean, she was kind of really messed up. Yeah. But I thought it was interesting how the narrator didn't go to save her, but it in fact was Tyler who went to save her.
Oh, yeah, and that started some sort of relationship between them?
That started a sort of relationship between them.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, I remember that he had a weird dream, and he was trying to talk to Tyler, the narrator, I mean. Yeah. And he was trying to talk to Tyler about it, and then Marla comes in, and she's really confused and angry at the narrator, which makes him confused in turn. So I guess it was interesting. It sort of hinted to what was to come in that film.
Yeah, and a little later also as well, he threatened the senator.
The senator, who was okay, because at that point Fight Club had began to start rioting and vandalizing things, vehicles, destroying them, and businesses. So the senator was sort of placed in a no option type position where he had to choose between the safety of his city or letting Fight Club stay, even though he had no idea what that exactly was. So it was a pretty simple choice for him. But then at that point, they threatened him. They sort of kidnapped him. No, not kidnapped him, but they sort of took hold of him in the bathroom, and they told him not to mess with them, that the people he's going after are the people that he depends on. So I think it was kind of an interesting way to say it too from Tyler. And what's interesting is that the narrator was shocked about this. He didn't really. He was kind of like, I guess, perplexed. He didn't think it'd go that far.
Yeah.
And I mean, he does also end up threatening his boss in that because he don't want it to be like Tyler.
Yeah.
He ends up hitting himself and when the boss threatened to fire him, and so he ended up getting what he wanted because he was saying that the boss was hitting him.
Yeah.
And so he ended up getting a good deal, I guess you could say, from there.
And then Project Mayhem, what did you think of that?
Okay, so Project Mayhem was really just destroying the city completely. Bombing buildings and especially credit buildings.
Oh, yeah, so they could erase the debts, I believe.
They could erase the debts, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting how Project Mayhem came to plan without the narrator knowing, even though that was him who made the plan. And so, I mean, I think everybody got really intense with it. And, I mean, that also did lead to the death of Bob, a character who was a character played by Meatloaf. And he was, I mean, he was there from the beginning with the narrator because he was part of the support groups too.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting, the entire ordeal with Project Mayhem. And really, I think that it was inevitable by the time that they began it because these people began to develop a cult mentality.
Yeah.
And it was really impossible for them to stop thinking like that. I mean, Jared Leto's character gets beat up really badly by the narrator himself, but he remains in the group because it's a cult-like mentality and you can't escape it.
And did you expect that many people would be in Fight Club? That were...
I mean, it ended up being everybody.
Yeah.
Right, that I know of. It ended up being everybody. So I don't know so much about the credit building being destroyed, if that's such a big deal. Because the majority of the people in there might have probably were actually in Fight Club.
Yeah, and so if that's the case, then how could they not talk about Fight Club if everybody's pretty much in it?
I find it controversial how they say you don't talk about Fight Club and then everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really...
It seems like something you could talk about if everyone's in on it, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, that's for such an iconic phrase or line, it's kind of redundant. Yeah, somewhat redundant. You know, and I find that kind of funny. And what did you think when you found Tyler?
Okay, so at that point, he was trying to find Tyler.
Yeah.
To try to get him to stop Project Mayhem. But then he starts realizing that, in fact, the big plot twist of the entire movie is that he is Tyler. That they're the same person. He has a sort of disorder. And, I mean, I love how they added the scenes before with Tyler and sort of from a different perspective, the outside perspective with him just being crazy and alone and hitting himself and everything.
Yeah.
So I thought it was kind of fun, I guess you can say. But it confuses me as to why people joined in to the fight at first.
Yeah.
It was just him fighting against himself. And I mean, I guess it was a really good plot twist. And I love how, I mean, when he went to the cops and everything, they said that Tyler had warned them about it and that they had to like harm him. And so I thought it was interesting how
so it was kind of like a dream type thing, right? Like all in his head. Yeah, that's a very interesting plot twist, and I was kind of unexpected, but that's probably why the narrator was never named.
Yeah, because
he didn't exist.
Is Tyler.
Yeah, or that. Yeah, like so that was a very interesting plot. And of course, that's essentially like the end of the film. And what did you consider it a success? Would you consider the film a success?
Well, okay, the end of the film, I think, kind of skipped over it.
Yeah, we skipped over it.
Marla sort of comes back to him in the building, and they sort of watch the explosions of the building themselves.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's kind of like not a happy ending, but sort of at the same time, because he didn't die, and he ended up, quote unquote, killing Tyler.
Yeah.
But he did survive, and he ended up being with the girl. So, but then the city was destroyed. So I guess it's sort of like a win-lose situation. And so I would consider this film a success because of how recognized it still is today, and how, I mean, popular everything is regarding it.
And it's according to TikTok, it's Sigma.
Oh yeah,
it's just like American Psycho.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cringy, honestly, but I mean, whatever. I like the film for its quality and everything. I think it was really good quality.
And what would you rate the film?
I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10.
And I'd give it a 7.5 since I haven't seen it in a long time. but from what I remember, it was a pretty good film. Anyway, do you have anything else to add, Alex?
No, I don't have anything else, Tony.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of Inside Information. We'll see you next week with another film. Goodbye.